Chapter 2, Lesson 8, The Transfer of Heat. Keywords: energy, thermal energy, conduction, conductor, insulator, convection, radiation. Getting the idea. You feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. On a hot day at the beach, the sand feels hot on your feet. On a cold day, the air in your room is warmer near the ceiling than near the floor. All these things happen because of the movement of one kind of energy. This energy moves in different ways. Understanding thermal energy. You have learned that energy is the ability to make things move or change. All matter is made up of tiny particles that are always moving. Thermal energy is the energy of these moving particles. We feel thermal energy as heat. Heat always flows from a warmer object to a cooler one. This movement of heat is called heat transfer. An object becomes cooler as heat moves out of it. An object becomes warmer as heat moves into it. When warmer objects are put together with cooler ones, the warmer objects lose heat and the cooler ones gain heat until all the objects are at the same temperature. The graph below shows the transfer of heat from a warm object to a cool object. So you can see here on the map, or on the graph, that the cool object started here at a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. The warm object started at a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. Once they were combined, by about 90 minutes, they were at the same temperature, which is about 25 degrees Celsius. There are three ways heat transfer can happen. They are called conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction. Imagine walking barefoot along a beach on a hot summer day. After walking on the sand, your feet feel hot. Heat moves from the hot sand to the soles of your feet by conduction. Conduction is the transfer of thermal energy between things that are touching. When two materials that are touching have different temperatures, heat moves from the warmer one to the cooler one. In other words, heat moves from the hot sand to the cooler soles of your feet. When sand gets hot, the particles that make up the sand move very fast. They have a lot of energy. When you walk on the sand, the particles make up your feet touch the sand. The hot particles of the sand bump against the cooler particles of your feet. Some thermal energy is transferred from the sand to your feet. Your feet gain thermal energy so they feel hotter. Because the sand loses heat to your feet, the sand gets a little cooler than it was before you walked on it. If your feet stayed in contact with the sand, more heat would be transferred from the sand to your feet until both the sand and your feet had the same temperature. Heating a pot of water on an electric stove is another example of conduction. Heat moves from the hot surface of the stove to the middle of the pot that is touching the stove. As the bottom of the pot gets hot, heat moves from the bottom of the pot to the cold water that is touching the bottom of the pot. Conduction also moves thermal energy through the part of a single solid object. As the bottom of the pot gets hot, heat moves from the bottom of the pot to the middle and then the top of the pot. It moves from the top of the pot to the lid and to the metal part of the handle. Iron, silver, and copper are all examples of metals. They allow heat to move through them easily. A material through which heat can move easily is called a conductor. Aluminum and stainless steel are other metals that conduct heat well. Most of the pot handle shown on page 47 is made of plastic instead of metal. The plastic handle does not get very hot because plastic is a good insulator. An insulator is a material that heat does not move through easily. Wood and rubber are also good insulators. Many metal cooking utensils have handles made of plastic, wood, or rubber. Handles made of these materials are safe to touch because heat does not pass through them to burn your hand. Glass is also an insulator. Food will heat more slowly in a glass pot than in a metal one, but it will stay hot longer. Other good insulators are leather and ceramics. Did you know? Air is a good heat insulator. It can help slow heat loss from a heated house to the cold air outside. Fluffy material called insulation is made with many air spaces. When put inside the walls of a house, the insulation helps keep the house warm. Convection. How does water in a pot on a stove get hot all the way through? Remember, the water at the bottom of the pot is heated by conduction. Some heat moves through the rest of the water by conduction as particles bump into each other and transfer thermal energy. But the water is also heated by convection. Convection is the transfer of thermal energy by the movement of liquids or gases. Think again about the pot of water on the stove. The water at the bottom of the pot is in contact with the metal of the hot pot, so conduction occurs. The bottom layer of water gets hot because it touches the metal pot. Warm water is lighter than cool water, so the warm water rises in the pot. Cool water is heavier than warm water, so the cool water sinks in the pot. As the cooler water reaches the bottom, it gets hot and rises. Water at the top is now cooler than the water below, so it begins to sink. This constant rising and sinking of warm and cool water causes convection currents. Convection currents transfer heat throughout the water. They also transfer heat through other liquids and through gases. Here's the picture of what it's being described in that last paragraph with the pot. The cool water sinks to the bottom, hot water rises. We know that because cool air sinks, warm air rises. Convection currents warm the air in a room. As air near a radiator or a vent is heated, it rises toward the ceiling. Then the air cools and sinks. This happens over and over, so heat moves throughout the room. Convection currents also move heat through Earth's oceans and atmosphere. Cold air sinks because it is heavier, and warmer air rises because it is lighter. This ongoing cycle produces currents of moving air, which we call winds. Convection is responsible for much of Earth's weather. You will learn more about weather in Chapter 3. Radiation. In conduction and convection, particles of matter transfer thermal energy. Energy can also be transferred by waves. Electromagnetic waves can transfer energy through matter and also through empty space. The transfer of energy by electromagnetic waves is called radiation. The sun is Earth's main source of electromagnetic waves. Energy from the sun travels millions of kilometers to Earth through empty space as electromagnetic waves. Recall from Lesson 5 that when energy from the sun reaches Earth, it warms liquid water on Earth's surface. This energy drives the water cycle. Radiation from the sun warms many things on Earth, including the ocean surface, the atmosphere, the ground, and you. Plants use part of this energy in the form of light to make food. Energy from a fire also travels from the fire through the air in waves. When the waves hit objects, the objects are heated by radiation. This is why you can feel the heat from a fire that is across the room from where you are. Make sure that you take a look at the questions down here. Use the text to answer the questions in the quiz from the Coach book.